Thank you for listening to the Business and Beyond podcast.
We appreciate all of our listeners. If this is your first time listening to the Business and Beyond podcast, we hope you enjoy this episode.
The NCAA is really worthless after today is also a very significant moment. But, many are arguing, good or bad. Many are arguing pro or con. But this day has been coming for a long time.
Quotes by Paul Feinbaum.
Feinbaum.
If I mess up your name, don't hate on us. Episode 44 of the Business and Beyond podcast is brought to you by Director Parada. This is interesting in here. If you're watching on YouTube, we have coffee mugs.
Yeah, it's the morning edition of Business and Beyond.
Recording. We just thought it was too much to be drinking whiskey at 8 a.m. So
at least start with a cup of coffee first.
Trust me, I thought of everything. Like, what can you put in coffee? I'm like, Bailey's. I don't want that in the morning. So we traded in our whiskey glasses for coffee mugs for this. And like I said, YouTube can notice it, but I think it's going to be pretty obvious for our podcast listeners when we're late in the show actually making good points rather than normally when we're getting tipsy and drunk and just God knows where our show goes.
Let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, but Paul Feinbaum talking about the new NCAA ruling that players can make money off their likeness,
it's
imaging.
the NIL rule, which is the name, image, and likeness. Yeah. And actually, just as I'm thinking about it, I had it prepared for later. We're going to talk about it. But first thing that comes to mind for me is let's get NCAA back on the PlayStation. Let's get that going. Let's get these guys, which it does become, there is a bigger issue there than just, okay, now we can start doing it, because now you're talking about, so how it works in the NFL standards is they go through the Players Association, which the NCAA still does not have a Players Association or union. So they would need some type of union rep set up in order to negotiate for them to divvy up everything properly.
And that's something we need to clear up, that what the NCAA ruling says and does not say. Technically, it does not say players can go make money. It says the NCAA will not restrict it.
Exactly.
And at some point, I think the federal government's going to step in and put actual ruling in here. So right now, they can't do anything. It went into effect July 1st, but they can't do anything right now, except for some of the players that play in the States, the NIL rule
was already passed into law.
Texas, Florida,
California.
Yes. There's about 12 states. Players that are not in those states, it's up to the individual schools to figure out what those are. And basically, it's just putting something down on paper. What they're all going to look about the same.
Yeah.
Boosters can't get involved. Colleges can't pay players directly.
Right.
And endorsements can't interfere with recruiting.
The gray area is going to come in to play for the NCAA. It's for each school to manage this in such a way that the players, that it doesn't get misconstrued that money came from the school themselves. That's where it's going to be tough when you get into endorsements.
Let's not lie. Money is going to be coming from the schools and the boosters, but they have to have that.
We talked about on episode
18.
18. We talked about this, and at that point, we all agreed on the show. Tyler joined us that week. That the players were already getting paid.
Yeah,
this was already going on. This ruling was more of a technicality, so to speak, a legal way to allow players
to players who aren't
to explain
the quarterback
this,
for Oklahoma getting
name, image, and likeness is they can sign deals, which some players have already started signing with some, like Bo Nix signed with some tea company, like a bottled iced tea company. Yeah. There's some other players they've signed, so they're going to be able to sign deals with their name. They're going to be able to do meet and greets. They're going to be able to be paid to speak. It's going to open up the opportunity for them to also put on their own summer camps, which could be huge for these kids in building their brand, as well as making money. It's not just the sheer fact of making money, is now these kids can build their own brand. And they can hire attorneys. They can hire this, and that's part of this ruling is now they can. It's allowing them to hire agents, attorneys, tax help, because that was one of the big questions I had is, okay, now we're going to allow these kids to go out and make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Who's going to help them pay their taxes? Now you're fixing to screw a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
When I first read this, but it did come out. They are allowed now to hire financial advisors. They can essentially build their team.
Get in trouble with taxes because they don't know. They're like, my guy will take care of it.
So these kids can build their own teams to help them manage this. And really, this is the way to go. Now, like Paul Feinbaum said, the NCAA is in trouble here. They waited till the 12 o'clock hour. They threw this out there. They don't know what they just opened up. They opened up a huge Pandora's box that I don't think they're prepared to manage.
Yeah, because you were talking about building their brand. There's a lot of other ways that we're not thinking at the top that maybe not the star players can build their brand, but if you are a defensive end or a kicker at one of these big schools, you can start making money off of what Joe Burrow commented on Twitter. He said, exciting time for college athletes, most excited for non-scholarship athletes who have been working jobs outside of sports to make ends meet. Free meals, sponsored posts, signings will make their lives a lot easier. Long overdue. Talk about sponsored posts. How many of these guys have Instagrams and TikToks? And now when you think of endorsements saying, okay, Nike and Adidas, they're going to go, but Bo Nix just signed a T deal. They're going to be making posts.
I mean, how many companies out there
with
with protein products, with things that go along with athletes, and who are you targeting to sell that to? At the college level, for a guy that's going to represent a brand, you're targeting that guy just beneath them in the high school, middle school, high school level.
Yeah,
that are looking up to those guys even more so than they are because they aspire to be at that next level. So that's great, and it's more so great for these guys like we're talking about, the non-scholarship guys. And you think, well, how are they going to use their name, image, likeness? Nobody knows who they are. But think about when they go back to their hometowns. Yeah. A lot of these guys are big stars in their hometown. So now they go back and they can get in with the local, whatever, pool shop or, lumber yard or something and put their name to that. And
actually make money for it while they're in college.
While they're in college, just to help make ends meet.
And being like I mentioned, kicker, but I guess kickers can be in scholarship if they're pretty good. But there's a lot of players that play for Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State that aren't on scholarship. But they can just say, hey, I'm a wide receiver for Ohio State. Yeah. There's a lot of places who want to get in on this, but don't want to pay millions or whatever it comes out to once the market sets itself. How much they want to pay. They don't want to pay the high end to get, Joe Burrow's not in college, but Joe Burrow or Vince Young back in the day. They're going to get these lesser known players, and they're going to say, hey, come to our restaurant. We're going to have the, what's his name from Ohio State? And people are like, oh, Ohio State, you're going to go.
And we're going to give this kid $500 and a free meal and come do a meet and greet just to get people out here for us.
Yeah. And then he's going to...
and it's going to blow him up because now people are going to start looking him up. And it's really going to expand the depth of college sports to allow these kids to be recognized and known. Which goes hand in hand with today's society with social media and influencers. Essentially, these kids are going to be influencers.
Mm-hmm. No, they will be, and they should already be. I mean, if you have... probably in middle school, early high school, if you have a chance to make it into college sports. So that's something I know you probably encourage Landon to do, not only to keep things on social media clean, because you never know who's going to dig him up, but to be growing that. Mm-hmm. Because that's a way you can
it's all about
to build your brand.
Yeah.
Like how many, with all this, there will be a lot more part of this market to grow that we have no clue on. Mm-hmm. So how many guys are going to, or how many schools are going to try to get certain guys to come play, knowing they're not going to offer them a scholarship? But hey, you can come play for Oklahoma. You can go get a free meal anywhere. You're going to make tons of money just saying you play for Oklahoma. Yeah. Which I know that's what the NCAA kind of didn't want.
Well, and that's one of the caveats is I don't believe it's written in, and I don't know if it's going to be. I think that's still part of the gray area. Is will the players be allowed to wear their school's logos, will they be able to wear the apparel the school's given them to these meet and greets to go make money?
And that's probably going to be an individual thing.
That's going to be part of it, and it could leave the school susceptible to issues with the NCAA. The way the NCAA ruling is written is it's the kid's name, image, likeness.
Yeah.
How does that tie in with school apparel, school logos, school rights? Can these kids go out and say, "Oh, I play for"?
Well, you have to be. That's the whole. I mean, no,
but
I get what you're saying.
That's where the NCAA made a mistake. They don't have this written in that it's not clear.
And wouldn't that be something if the NCAA said, "Yeah, you can go make money off, but just don't say you play for this school"? Like, well, that's the whole point.
I guess you could say college athlete. You could. There are things that you could do there. I don't know.
Couldn't they kind of already do that? I mean, they were already doing that.
Yeah, but they couldn't go out and say they were making money. I mean, they couldn't let people know. They couldn't actually be paid or incentivized or given a free meal, which I know that was one of the debates in the past, and we talked about it on episode 18, was, the argument always has been, well, these kids get scholarships. They get free school. And we had the numbers. I don't have all the stats now of how many scholarships are even available. But just like you said, this is more so for the kids that aren't on scholarship.
Yeah.
That are paying their own way through school, that are also having to try to work a job to pay just to eat, that don't have all of this. There's 100 kids, say, on a football team in college.
Yeah.
And what was it, 30? I want to say it was 30 some odd scholarships they had when we spoke about it at the time.
It was about 50.
Okay.
But
say half your team's on scholarship. What about the other half of those kids? Their parents are having to foot this money for them to be able to play
ball. Main argument was for the guys who can go pro, but they're being forced to stay in college, and they're going to risk injury and this and giving up lots of money. But yeah, of course they're in scholarship, but they're not staying the whole time anyways.
Yeah.
So really, I think what would be more beneficial would be to offer scholarships to the lesser players, because those are the limited amount of scholarships you have. Because star quarterbacks, he's going to get, he's going to stay for 3 years and go to the NFL anyways, and he's going to be able to make lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, lesser known players coming to a restaurant and being able to get paid $500 or whatever. They're not going to make thousands and thousands of dollars. They're going to make full salaries.
Yeah.
The market is yet to be set on what this is. It's wide open. Exactly. You were talking about, there was a tweet about Arch Manning coming out of high school.
Actually, I was looking at that now, that an analyst projects that he can make $10 million as a freshman.
And they're going to have to wait till, like we were talking about, the fine print comes out from where it's NCAA, or how they're allowed to make money, how they're allowed to be paid.
Yeah.
We just have a few, like, you can't do this, this, and this. But they're going to find ways around that. And they're thinking, and I guess the NCAA's thinking might be, okay, they can make a little bit of money. Because when you're talking about $10 million and you're getting paid for your education, mm-hmm. so on a scholarship, like, how much is that? Even the most expensive schools, you're talking $80,000 a year in value.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see where they set this market. It's going to be like NFL quarterbacks getting paid. It's not that you're the best player if you're going to get paid the most. It's, okay, you're a top 5-6 player. It's your time to get paid.
Or you're even the best marketer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids that...
and that's what it is. In the NFL, comparing it to the NFL is pretty arbitrary, because there's one way to make... I mean, they have other ways, but we're talking about just their salary. There's no salary here.
Yeah.
They can go out and sign autographs and do this and that, and then there's going to have to be a limit, because there's an hourly limit. You're only allowed to work so many hours because you're practicing and going to school. Now, they're not going to... Eventually, they're going to have issues with kids constantly hours a day going to events and things and getting paid.
Well, and that was part of it, is that... And I don't know if this was the ruling. I read a story. I don't know if this was in the ruling or that this would be something between the schools, but that the athletes would have to coordinate all of this with the school. So mm-hmm. essentially, they have to tell the school, "Hey, I signed a deal with Nike. I'm doing this. I have this meet and greet. It can't just be these guys doing it. They have to be open about who they're.
What happens when, because I guess Nike has to deal with the NCAA on uniforms and things like that, right?
Every school has their own. There's Adidas, Nike.
So, assuming a kid has, well, I guess it would be a school issue, not an NCAA issue. Well, I was thinking if they wear something they're not supposed to.
It is written into there. If the school is, if they're have a deal with a company that's not sponsored by the school, they have to wear the school's products. So say a kid has an Adidas deal and his school's a Nike school, he has to wear Nikes while he's playing. Now, he can wear his Adidas outside, he can go to, these big Adidas events, he can,
So what's going to happen?
So these kids are going to have special deals where they're still allowed, like unlike in the NBA where you can't wear cross brands or whatever. They're going to have to have special deals written for these guys, which those are going to be the elite guys. Nike, Adidas,
well, the point I was going to
Puma.
make
These companies are not going to invest in a kid.
Well, the point I was going to make, say, what if, was it Des Bryant or a watch?
No, it was Odell.
Odell Beckham. Wore a watch he wasn't supposed to because Rolex, whoever it was, paid him. It's like, okay, that's more than his fine's going to be. So what if a kid does something like that? Because in this ruling, there's not... Eventually, there probably will be. Yeah. They're not going to get fined. The school may get fined, but...
Well, and here's what the NCAA made the mistake, and we're talking about this, anyone that's not following this, the reason the NCAA doesn't have a plan is because they waited till the last moment. The July 1st date came from all of the state legislations that passed this. Mm-hmm. It went into effect in each state July 1st.
Yeah.
So the NCAA had to scramble and get this moving just to...
And that's why the wording
just to match it.
Yeah. NCAA isn't saying you can go get paid endorsements. They just aren't rejecting you from doing it. So if
because they really don't know what they're going to do.
Exactly. That's all that it says. Like you said, there's no rules to it.
Well, the schools,
it's whatever
the schools have a
except
plan.
You can't do this, and this. But
the schools have a plan. Like the kids have a plan. Like Paul Fedabon said, everyone except the NCAA at the top knows what they're going to do. Everyone else has been planning for this. These kids have been working since 2019. You had a group of college players that started putting this into motion and fighting this rule to be paid.
So what's going to happen is the star high school players, because I guess they probably didn't do it before because they're going to go to the NCAA where they can't make money anyways. Adidas is going to start going and picking these kids off before they get to a college that Adidas doesn't sponsor. And so they're going to be on there. What's the kid's name? He may be in high school now, but we were watching. He got his own YouTube page. I can't remember his name, but he's outrageous football player, and he's been doing this since he was like in sixth grade, I think, on his YouTube page. But the star high school players, are gonna, be crazy athletes in college sports generally. Stop saying it's not just exclusive to college football, but all college sports. They're going to start getting endorsement deals set up through their parents, and
even to that. This is only Division I ruling. This rule does not trickle down to Division II, Division III at this point. Not yet. It hasn't ruined. I think that's coming soon, but this is only a Division I ruling from what I read. That it wasn't written across the board just yet.
So, one of the rules, which is, I guess it's not in the fine print, but it was in this agreement, a ruling that endorsements can't affect where players go in recruiting, which
how you police
that's got to be a 200 page. That's got to be like an act of Congress with all the fine print where they can and go. How did they not?
How are they gonna?
It's like a lot of people who listen to this podcast can appreciate this analogy. If you have a small business and it's tax time, you're writing things off. How many things are you writing off that really aren't business expenses? Like, we talked about this during this lunch, so we're going to write this off as a business expense. It's going to be something like that. Okay, a booster can't talk to him. This guy can't talk to this guy. But maybe their kids play in the same AAU league or prep, go to the same prep school or something like that, the same UIL district. like, hey, sign this deal and we can get you, if you sign with Nike instead of Adidas, maybe Texas takes you, or vice versa. If you go sign with Texas, if you make they can't put it down in writing.
Yeah.
Because it'd be illegal.
You pick the right school. And
you make a soft agreement or a soft, what do you call it? Anyway, you say you're going to go to Texas. We'll sign with Nike or whoever, we'll sign a bigger deal, and you'll make money because you play for Texas, and then we're obviously going to pay you a lot of money for endorsing Nike. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a lot of under the table stuff like there already is. That's the thing. The NCAA was making good points, saying, well, if we open this up, it's going to make it unfair. Well, it kind of already is unfair. Texas A&M, Oklahoma can pay under the table more than we brought up UNT, North Texas, Fresno State, schools like that. And then the NCAA or whoever makes the decisions on the scheduling makes it kind of unfair too, if you want to use the word unfair, putting Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas in those prime time network games. Mm-hmm. Rightfully so. That's where you want them at. But then it's going to help recruiting that they're going to go play there.
Yes, but does that affect sponsorships? If the rulings come out, these kids are not allowed to wear your products on the field.
During games, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. During the game, does that matter? I mean, does it matter if you want to sign a kid, but he has to wear Nike on the field, or he can't wear your whatever? I mean, does that affect these kids actually getting these deals?
Off the top of your head, who's right now for this upcoming season's the perennial college football player?
I really don't even know.
Okay, let's just use Joe Burrow for example, just because his tweets still popped up here. Joe Burrow goes in and signs. Heck, I don't keep up with all the sponsorships. So let's say Puma's not a huge sponsorship in college football as Nike is.
Right.
So let's say he plays for LSU. I'm not sure if this is true. LSU has a deal with Nike or something. But he has a deal with Puma. Okay, during the game he's got to wear Nike, but during warm-ups he's wearing Puma stuff because in the pregame the camera's going to be on him.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the televised portion of that. Does it affect Puma
I'm
saying,
sure
hey,
it will. I mean,
we're going to give you big bucks to be part of our team, but
I mean, as much as you want to criticize the NFL for, they deal with all this all the time with the Odell thing. Like, go get whatever sponsorship you want to get. You just can't do it during the game. If the NFL has a shoe deal with Nike or whoever they have a shoe deal with, you have to wear those shoes. So in warm-ups, they're wearing all kinds of different shoes, and I know the NBA had a problem with it a couple of years ago.
And I think they've pulled back on that.
Yeah, they pulled back, and they have different nights where you
had
can
to be
wear
within the color.
Yeah, the colors, and then there's nights you can wear whatever you want because I think at the time the issue was it was a charity and he was getting fined for it.
And has that even been an issue now? Does anyone even talk about that? They can wear any. I know someone like Luka would wear red shoes, and the Mavs have no red in their color.
Yeah, he was wearing in the playoffs. He's wearing orange.
Yeah, is it even an issue?
No, I liked it because because when you had Kleba in there, who kind of looks like Luka when you're just running around.
Yeah,
like you can point out Luka right away. He's wearing the orange shoes, but it makes it difficult when you don't have all these bylaws, what you can and can't do. And I think they're just going to let the market. I mean, it seems like they only have a couple of months to come out with something. And they're just going to let the market figure it out, that kids are just going to try stuff and then they're not going to like it. And then they're going to say, okay, you can't do that. And then you can do this. And like you said, they're going to be hiring lawyers to figure out what they can and can't do. And they're going to push the limit. They're going to find, these lawyers and agents are going to find reading in between the lines and find what they can do and what they're not allowed to do. And they're going to do it until they come up with a new amendment to the rule, which is the way everything works. Just like the college football playoff, the way it came out, then they expanded it. Are they going to expand it to 12 teams now? That's what they thought. They're not. They're just skipping 8. They're going straight to 12.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. The NCAA does there's a lot of things you question. And when they're coming up with it, well, this is why we don't do it. Yeah, that makes sense. But okay, nobody's saying the school should pay players. Although we're bringing up that $1 billion industry that college sports is, bigger than any other pro sports league. They could probably afford to pay these players. You're like, well, how much do you pay? Like, okay, it really doesn't matter. Come up with a limit, like just like your scholarships.
Yeah.
But this, like, why are they getting in the middle of this? Let them make their own decisions. It has nothing to. That's like the NFL telling Dak Prescott he can't deal with Pepsi because Pepsi's not a. Of course, Jerry Jones screwed that up or screwed the NFL and said, "Screw it. Cowboys will have one sponsor, the NFL will have another. Beer,
Yeah.
soft drinks, everything."
Yeah.
But you're going to have something like that where there's going to be a larger than life player, maybe a Johnny Manziel come in there.
This ruling just probably created more jobs that the NCAA is going to have to hire teams and teams and teams of people to deal with this on a daily basis. You're going to constantly have paperwork shuffling across. And now you've created a murky situation for them to, to monitor this and make sure that there's no violations.
Yeah. Because on its face, you're saying, okay, NCAA is not paying anything. The consumers are paying. We're paying. If we want to go, if a restaurant wants to pay someone to come do a signing, or, a company wants to say, yeah, tag us on your Instagram posts and we'll pay you this. It's a free market. That's what they want to do. But the problem is when smaller schools don't have that kind of reach, but they're, they have boosters that are millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah.
They say, okay, I'm not allowed to pay him directly, but I'll make a donation to here or promise this guy something. So you open up your business for whatever, or you sponsor this guy, I'll pay you for it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard. I'm not saying they should just, ignore it. It's going to be really hard to not only police that, or not only to monitor that, but to police that. Because if they're doing everything by the letter of the law, at least, in between the lines of the letter of the law, and they're not, and, federal government or IRS or anybody's doesn't care what they're doing financially, how can the NCAA come in and do anything? Yeah. All they can do is suspend a kid, and it's going to be real difficult. And so, because like we say, the states that don't have this ruling right now, it's going to be up to the individual schools. So the state of Texas says they can get paid. So the University of Texas and Texas A&M are going to have to come up with their own bylaws too, although they aren't legally obligated to, because they have to protect themselves. Because what if Joe Blow goes over here and does all these endorsements, and it comes out, okay, a booster was doing this, that the booster's not necessarily, I mean, he's technically tied to the school, but you have to punish somebody. You have to go punish the school. So they're going to have all these bylaws to protect themselves. Yeah. And the schools are going to have to monitor that, because if they don't, then you're going to have SMU style violations.
The biggest thing I think we could see value in this whole situation that we haven't talked about yet is the opportunity for these kids to become entrepreneurs and to start their own businesses and brands now.
Yeah.
And, where they weren't allowed to do that before, where they couldn't do that before.
And that's where this whole thing is.
And how much crazier does that get when a kid starts a small business, and now he has a small business, and his business is gaining contracts based on, X, Y, and Z from these boosters that have connections here that, it's going to create even more chaos, but it's a really cool, opportunity for these youngsters to start a business,
social
to go out
media,
and start a brand and sell their brand, sell products.
Because you look at autograph signings and endorsements and appearances, it's these different ways to make money, but social media ties that all together, and it's their brand.
Yeah.
And I don't think the NCAA is ready for that. You're going to have players, and what's going to happen is you're going to have, Eli Manning. He went to Ole Miss because that's where his dad went. Peyton Manning went to UT because that was Tennessee because that was a better opportunity. But Ole Miss isn't a perennial college football school. So Eli going there, he probably could have gone to wherever he wanted to. So you're going to have players, star players that do that go to other schools because of legacies or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's going to put some of these schools on the map for a few years.
Yeah.
Because of their brand, because they can make money, because they're going to be in commercials. And like you said, it's still iffy if you know, a guy playing at UNT, University of North Texas, can wear a Mean Green jersey in a commercial or something like that. But you still know he can put it on his Instagram.
Yeah. That
I'm the starting quarterback for the UNT Mean Green. And so when he does this and that way, I mean, when you see somebody, what's the first thing you go do? You go and follow them on social media, Facebook, whatever. So he's going to do commercials. He's going to do the autograph signings, and he's going to be posting and getting millions of followers. And the schools, especially the smaller schools, are going to benefit from that. And that's where the boosters come more into play, because Oklahoma and Ohio State and Alabama, they can legit go up and say, hey, man, you're coming to play for a perennial school. You're going to make tons of money. We don't have to have our boosters come and, step in. Well, but TCU and SMU and UNT, just because those are in North Texas, or UTA, in a sense, talking basketball and baseball, they're going to find the loopholes quicker to how they can play it, because some players don't care about that. Like, hey, you're going to pay me money? Because I don't know. I may be a star high school player, and I don't know that I'm going to the NFL, so I don't have to go play for these.
Yeah.
If I can be a starter at this smaller school and you're going to find ways to make me lots of money and my family doesn't have any money, I'm going to go there.
That's on that local level. Well, let's look at it on the flip side. How much does this benefit small businesses that can't go and hire a professional athlete to come support their brand, to come in and do a meet and greet, a speaking, but you can find that local guy that'll do it for, like we said, $500. And maybe that's a low ball. I don't know. You could pay these guys a much lesser amount, incentivize them much less, but still get somewhat of a local draw from those kids. That's going to help these small businesses. Something like Business and Beyond podcast. We need to go find us a kicker here at one of these small schools.
So, no, depending on where you're located, I'm going to use Cowboys as an example because we're in Dallas-Fort Worth. So, obviously, Dak Prescott signed with Pepsi and all these other players. How many of these car wreck commercials do you see with somebody who they are on the Cowboys, but they're not, David Irvin, I think, was on one of them. But all these random local businesses having commercials with these random Cowboys just because they cost less. They're not going to go get Tony Romo to do it. They're going to. So you're going to have local businesses that can afford to have players coming. Yeah. And at first, sure, I bet you can get the star players until the market's worked itself out. And, I legitimately believe the top players in college football soon will be making millions of dollars.
I think it's also a good opportunity.
Unless they cap it somehow.
There's a good opportunity for large corporate businesses, like nationally known businesses, could tie in and do this on the local level. Say a Starbucks, a McDonald's, what are these bigger franchises, right, that are nationwide? You go in and you pick players in each of these areas, each of these markets, and bring them into your store in in their respective markets to help even grow your reach.
Yeah, or even regional businesses. I mean, you just look at the Big 12 conference. What if they have dealings together where they go in and make business deals, and what if they get something where Baylor, TCU, Texas, Oklahoma, they all have a deal with one company, and they all have a player, just like you said, just at regional levels. I mean, there's endless amounts of money that could be thrown at this. That's why I'm saying I don't think it's crazy that they're going to be millionaires by the time they're being drafted.
A lot of these kids will be set up for the future, and hopefully my only concern is like we see a lot of young professional athletes that aren't taught to manage their money properly, and that this money could ruin, and I think that has been the argument, this money could ruin them at an earlier age.
Yeah.
I hope that they're prepared. So now,
because that was an argument already with rookies making a lot
through the high school level and even through college, we've got to make sure that these kids are set up with the proper outlets to teach them how to manage this and how to set this up. I mean, it's gonna happen. You're gonna have a kid that's gonna get duped over by an agent. It's gonna come in and screw him with a contract that he doesn't understand. It's gonna happen. That's gonna be there.
Well, just the same way when TV and college football started to merge together. I mean, where you're interviewing players. Mm-hmm. So colleges started putting these players through class. I don't know if it's actual courses in school or classes.
Yeah.
To how to be, how to go through an interview, what to say, what not to say. This is how you do it and look more professional. I think early on, maybe even back in high school, you may do it where star players are taking. Okay, this is how you deal with money because I think it's going to trigger unless there's something they put in the fine print or law that they can't deal with high schoolers. What's to stop Coke going and getting this star quarterback who they know they're already saying they're committing to Alabama or whatever, just get with their parents because they're underage and say, hey, let's get a deal going. We'll pay you $1 million to be the spokesman. So they're already in there before they're even bigger time. So they don't have to compete with anyone. They say, hey, your son is 10-year contract, $10 million, 10-year contract. So by the time they're in the NFL, you're going to take that risk to see if they actually make it. By the time they're in the NFL, they're still under contract.
But your investment is so much less.
You're thinking, okay, he was the number 1 overall pick, and we're paying him what he was making in high school to represent Coke. We already have that endorsement. And I think there are companies crazy enough to do stuff like that.
I do too.
We were talking about the full-time company I worked for was acquired by one of the biggest building material companies in the world. And there was a lot of, I'd say controversy, but a lot of criticism for this company from outside. Like, why did you pay so much? It ended up being a lot more. Like, I don't know how much. It's already been announced, so I guess I can say it on here. 9 times what our annual revenue is what they acquired us for. So people are saying that's just crazy money. There's no precedence for it because it's 2 different industries almost. And people are saying, well, look at what they make. In the scheme of things, if nothing works out, that's like what they round off to write off crap,
Yeah.
So there are going to be companies like Coke that, okay, what's a few $1 million for them? If this guy ends up getting hurt or he doesn't pan out or he gets burnt out, okay, it was a risk. It was a big risk, but that's just stuff we write off anyways. We're going to round that money off at the end of the year anyway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's the positive spin on this, though, is it gives these kids that opportunity. Could you imagine in college with the correct team around you to manage even just $1 million? I mean, these kids could take these contracts, go put them in the market, invest. They're essentially set for life, no matter what their career does.
And I think there will be, to the NCAA's point, there will be stuff done like we were talking about. They're going to find the fine print. That's why NCAA needs to come out with something that set in stone. But that was already happening. So take just random examples of where this kid's growing up in poverty. Mm-hmm. And he's just going to take I don't care. Like, if I make the NFL, great, but I'm going to go to a big school. They're giving me money. I can't just say no and let my parents, grandparents struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they can legally do it. They can still decide where they want to go. They don't have to sign anything, they weren't signing anything anyways because it was illegal before, but they don't have to make decisions based on that. So I think a lot of the times it may turn into who's the highest bidder, but for the most part, like, I want to go play at TCU. They're going to give me money, or they're not giving me money, but I can make money through this or that. Mm-hmm. And don't get us wrong. There's going to be, you're like, well, how do you know how much money you're going to make? That's some fishy stuff. You're going to have agents or lawyers or somebody who are going to come into you pro bono and say, you don't have to pay me anything until we get something done. Yeah. You can do this, you can do this endorsement and this once But if they can make some money, they don't have to go accept money to play for Oklahoma
it's going to be
or Ohio
important
State.
From a parent's perspective or a family in general that they educate themselves on these rulings and what the kids are and are not allowed to do. Mm-hmm. That, every one of them should go out and be creating a brand, create a website, create something for these kids that are going to go play, that have the opportunity. to get that ball rolling for them, acting as their agent to help them out, hopefully not to take advantage of them, but then also to start educating the kids about what they can and cannot do and what opportunities they have through this.
And something that it seems on its face that it's something you don't want to deal with, because we're talking about endorsements should not affect recruiting. That I think schools and businesses should be partnering up, because they're going to do it anyways under the table, McDonald's and I don't know, UT, Texas, I don't know, but they're going to have these things where say, hey, you can come get endorsed by this company. They're going to do it regardless, but I think it's going to be harder for companies to take advantage of these kids when the schools are involved. I think everybody shouldn't be involved. And then you have in the fine print, you're not allowed to say this when you're recruiting. You can't, although it's well known, you can't say, hey, come to us and we'll pay you. You probably get $100,000 endorsement.
Essentially, what you would think is that this wouldn't change the recruiting aspect. I know it will, but
because it already has Nike and Duke and North Carolina.
To oversimplify that, the recruiting process shouldn't change. These guys are recruiting based on talent, based off all these things. I mean, if anything, it might make it easier for the schools that can't offer as much, offer as much, from boosters on the back end. These kids have these opportunities to go to make this money. You look at a LeBron James or somebody, does LeBron go to college? If he can build a brand and continue to make money, does he go that avenue? Does he forego going to the NBA right away?
You look at, I mean, because building your brand has been, a known thing. It's not something new, but I think it's bigger than ever because of social media. And you think Air Jordan, well, it's Nike, but it's Air Jordan. He built his brand. And I don't know that LeBron does or doesn't go, but I don't think when LeBron went to the NBA, he would understand how big his brain would get with making movies and, even to the political stuff, whether you agree with it or not. But now, I think that's all people should. Whether you're going to be an athlete or someone famous or not, you have a brand. Mm-hmm. And when you go to college or work at a company, they look at social media, whether they should or not. They will go look. Brand, yeah. That's your brand, so you should always be, obviously keeping it clean, but building it. If you know what you want to do, go follow people and add people on random social media sites or on all your social media sites in that industry. That just helps build your circle. Mm-hmm. So that's something that it will help smaller schools, because when you're a star athlete and your favorite school is, I don't know, TCU, but you're like, no, don't go. You can go play, or maybe TCU's too big of a school. You just say a Division II school or whatever. But I say, no, go play at Texas. You can make money. Don't be stupid. Go play, because you may not be an NFL player, because it's hard. There are only a few people you're like, he's going to the NFL. Yeah. You can be a star college athlete, and you're like, well, if you stick to it, you probably will. But they're not saying go Ohio State, Alabama, because you may not even start as a freshman. But you want to go there because they're going to pay you money, or if you're going to the NFL, you want to be up there to make you. Well, you can be picked higher, but it helps these smaller schools because it's off the table. You can make money here. You can make more money, obviously, going to bigger schools, but you can still make money. You
can still come here.
Now go have fun. That's the school you want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. I see this being a big thing for some of these college athletes, especially at the smaller schools, schools that are in smaller communities, for the opportunity, like we talked about, they can put on summer camps, or even on a smaller scale of just doing lessons. You've got maybe a college baseball player playing at a smaller school that is going to do some hitting lessons or something with kids, make $40 an hour, giving hitting lessons on the weekends or, in off season, just to help out. I mean, because that's where a lot of those guys end up trending to that news once their career is over, whether it's college or they go play some semi-pro or pro. They end up coming back down and doing that, a lot of those guys. So if they can start it building that brand while they're still playing,
or they can do
while they're very relevant. What
if they don't ever make it to pro sports? But they're take like Grayson Allen. He still plays in the NBA, but it's very irrelevant.
Yeah.
But he was a star player at Duke.
He's a known name.
He can build his brand, which he was building his brand anyways, but, when there's not limits on endorsements and things like that, he could really build his brand. And then go play. If it didn't work out, come back and you have...
Yeah, I mean, back in his community where he grew up, he could have a summer camp that goes on every year to not only help out in the community, but to help build his brand and make him a little money.
Yeah, the opportunities are endless. That's why the NCAA needs to come out and have some rules, because it can get crazy.
And they will. We're going to continue to follow this story, and we'll, plug in some things as we find them throughout shows in the future. We may circle back around to this when there are some more official things in line. And, I think we're going to continue to do some research on this and look at other opportunities for these kids, because the entrepreneurial options now just expanded exponentially with this ruling now. I mean, the opportunities in the market just probably doubled with now all these NCAA athletes that can make money on their name, image, and likeness.
And when you think, we're talking about brands, when you think LeBron and Shaq, they're making outrageous amounts of money with franchising other, but outside of sports, that they were very smart in investing in. And that's something you would hope kids will understand. Like, yeah, you can go make a little bit of money here, and going and play here will, I guess, help. But when you're not just talking about primetime games and making it to bowl games or the big dance or anything like that, you have your Instagram follow, you have your brand, where you can go to these secondary schools and maybe even make a bigger impact, because it's more interesting. It's like he's playing at Northwestern, and he's a big deal. And I think it's mutually beneficial all the way around. Yeah. And NCAA needs to figure out how they can make it beneficial, instead of being on the defensive and trying to control this and that, which I don't know how many behind the scenes big boosters are trying to say, yeah, let's not get this passed because that weakens us. But they'll find their way in. Yeah,
I think so. I think, you have too many boosters that own car dealerships and own things that, I mean, I don't know if this ruling keeps a booster from employing a kid, or, I mean, can a booster not still, put this kid on a billboard in town?
I'm sure not directly, but indirectly, can his business? Yeah. But is that going to stop? Booster's going to pay this company to do it anyways. Yeah, exactly. Under the table, some form of donations or whatever. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that, charity situations where that's fishy, but it's a fine line to go investigate charity deals. That was the whole shoe deal. Is, hey, no, this is a charity. I'm wearing these shoes. You're fining me for wearing shoes. It was a Christian deal, and like everybody. Yeah. Not that he was doing that for that purpose, but it's you had to put a face value on everything. Yeah. And there's people behind this. That's why NCAA is way behind on this, because there's people already, okay, if they're probably going to make this a rule, because this is crazy. If they don't, we're just going to do this. And so who's going to be the first collegiate athlete to make $1 million? That's going to be the first thing. Mm-hmm. This market's going to be crazy. And then you're going to be saying, okay, they're making are they overpaid? Which, who cares? I mean, I guess if Pepsi wants to play, or Nike or whoever wants to pay somebody, and they're not as good as you thought they were going to, they're a bust. It's not really that big a deal. But I know, because it's something Nike was doing in college basketball. Although they weren't endorsing them because they couldn't, but they were encouraging players to go to these schools, because Nike, whoever it was, is an impartial third party. Like, yeah, you should go play here or whatever. So that's when schools and other companies have deals going together where, hey, go endorse that kid before he's in college. Yeah. And then push him our way. And I think that's what the big deal about not letting endorsements affect recruiting, which it's going to regardless. It's impossible to say it's not. Yeah. It's like in a court setting, we tell the jury, disregard what he just said. I heard it. I can't. Yeah. It's already happened. And they know. And like I said, people at, baseball, or at their kids' baseball games and stuff, everybody knows each other. So you can't stop that just camaraderie talk. Yeah. So it's going to be very difficult to police, but even more so when you're not in the front runner of it, and you saw this coming for a long time.
Yeah. Again, we'll keep following this, and we'll get to the bottom of this. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. All Fine Mom said, day has been coming.
Yep. Thank you again for supporting the Business and Beyond podcast.
Be sure to hit the subscribe button to be alerted every time we post a new episode.